There will be terrorism in the United States, just as there was in the 1970s. This is not about Palestine. This is pure anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, anti-Westernism, anti-Judeo-Christianism. It's just anti.
Is it going to get worse before it gets better? And how can we fix it, Alan?
It's getting much worse because these people who are the Hitler Youth of today are the future of tomorrow. They're going to become the editors of the New York Times. Already the New York Times is part of the problem. Look, why does Hamas do this? It does this because it has a winning strategy. They call it the CNN strategy. In my book, War Against the Jews, I call it the dead baby strategy. You kill Jews in Israel. You know Israel's going to try to get the terrorists and try to prevent the rockets. You put your babies and children with the rockets and with the terrorists. You know then inevitably Israel will kill some babies. You then show it to CNN. CNN puts it in the lead because if it bleeds, it leads. And if it bleeds babies, it leads even more. The media plays a role in this. The world then condemns Israel. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's going to happen again and again and again. Hamas must be totally destroyed. People say, oh, you can never destroy an ideology. Yes, you can.
What is the ideal or the realistic ideal scenario for Israel right now? What happens?
Ultimately, the two-state solution is the least worst solution. It's not perfect.
What happens in Gaza?
Gaza has to be ruled by the Palestinian Authority. It can't be ruled by Hamas.
You're looking at the campus of Harvard. There's no control by the faculty over what seemed to be really blatant anti-Semitism.
Students have been some of the greatest villains in modern history. Students brought Hitler to power at the University of Munich. Students helped Stalin. Students helped the Ayatollah Khomeini. Students helped Mussolini. It's going to happen in the United States. And these students are going to join the terrorists. And they're going to participate in the blowing up of schools and churches and synagogues. This is a fight for the heart and soul of the future. So it's coming to a theater near you if it's not stopped in the Middle East.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, author, and political commentator. You are one of the most recognized and sought-after attorneys in the world and have spent much of your career looking after high-profile clients, including O.J. Simpson, Jeffrey Epstein, Mike Tyson, Julian Assange, and of course, Donald Trump. You were the youngest full professor at Harvard Law School history at the age of 28 and spent 46 years teaching while also maintaining your legal practice in both criminal and civil law. You've written over 40 books, including the bestsellers The Case for Israel, Chutzpah, and your autobiography, Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law. Your latest book, War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism, looks at how events on October 7th have changed the relationship between Israel and the United States. You have said that Israel may be forced to consider its nuclear options as a last resort to assure its survival, and that a ceasefire would only lead to more civilian deaths in the long run. Alan, welcome back to London Real.
Well, thank you so much. I actually taught at Harvard 50 years, 10,000 students, but I wouldn't say so proud of my current association with Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, let's start there. What is happening on the ground in America? Because, you're looking at the campus of Harvard and you're seeing things that I'm guessing you would have never imagined you would have seen during your tenure, where it just seems like there's no control by the faculty over what seemed to be really blatant anti-Semitism, discriminatory practices by the students. What's happening there on the ground?
Well, I'm not surprised. Harvard in the 1930s, like Oxford University and like Yale University, was very strongly pro-Nazi. There were all kinds of support for Hitler. Harvard welcomed Nazi diplomats. It sent its own faculty to Nazi universities that had just fired all of its Jews. Yale had students pledge not to ever fight against Nazism as Oxford University did. Students have been some of the greatest villains in modern history. Students brought Hitler to power at the University of Munich. Students helped Stalin. Students helped the Ayatollah Khomeini. Students helped Mussolini. So I know students. I've looked them in the eye. They're not children. They're 20, 25 years old. They know the difference between right and wrong, and many of them have chosen wrong. And they get no pass from me on that.
But I heard an interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I think was at Harvard in the 90s, and he said it was nothing like that then. He said there was expression, but there was also both sides being talked about on campus. Has it changed significantly in even 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, Harvard got the lowest ranking from FIRE, the institute that supports free speech, the lowest ranking of any university in the United States for free speech. I've been retired from Harvard for 10 years. I taught 10,000 students. I was among the most popular professors. Hundreds of students came to my classes. I have not been invited back to speak at Harvard in favor of a two-state solution for Israel, even though I'm a moderate on Israel. I cannot speak at Harvard. When I was invited back by a group, Chabad, to speak at Harvard, the school, they had to move the talk off campus for fear of my safety. You cannot today, even before October 7th, make the case, moderate case, for a two-state solution. And none of these demonstrations are pro-Palestine. Let's be clear about that. They're anti-Israel, pro-Hamas. I didn't see a single sign ever after October 7th calling for a two-state solution. Not a single demonstration has been pro-Palestinian. They call them pro-Palestinian, but they're anti-Palestinian. They're pro-Hamas. They're anti-trying to resolve this issue peacefully. They're pro-Iran. They're pro-Hamas, they're pro-Hezbollah, they're pro-terrorism. Now we're seeing some support for Osama bin Laden. This is extreme radicalism. And let me tell you where it's going. There will be terrorism in the United States, just as there was in the 1970s. Efforts to blow up universities, efforts to blow up recruiting centers, efforts to grow up Fort Dix. It's going to happen in the United States. And these students, these lovely, wonderful students, are going to join the terrorists as they did in the 1970s. And they're going to participate in the blowing up of schools and churches and synagogues. This is a fight for the heart and soul of the future, not only of America, but of the Western world. And many students and many faculty are on the wrong side of that fight.
What happened, Alan? Were they infected with the mind virus that was based in Marxism and then amplified by our technology and our social media networks? Is it that simple?
No, it's simpler than that. It's all the fault of the diversity, equity, inclusion, ethnic studies programs. They have ruined universities. I call for the total abolition of the diversity, inclusion, equity, bureaucracy. First of all, they don't want diversity. They want just skin color diversity. The last thing they want is diversity of opinion. They don't want equality. Equity is the exact opposite of equality. It means identity politics. It means no meritocracy. They certainly don't want inclusion. As the former president of Harvard put it, they exclude Jews, Asians, and other non-privileged minorities. They want the privileged minorities, African Americans and others. And these privileged minorities support Hamas. Women for Hamas, gays for Hamas, transgenders for Hamas. My son had an interesting idea, birthright, which sends Jewish kids to Israel to see their birthright. Birthright for Gaza. Let's send gays for Gaza to Gaza. And it would be cheap because they wouldn't have to get a return ticket. They'd all be murdered and would be killed by Hamas. This is such absurdity. And it grows out of a mindset that is anti-American, that sees everything in terms of secular colonialist nonsense, and there's no room, no opportunity for debate. It's a knee-jerk attitude, and there's nothing to do with Palestinians. Let's be clear about that. The two things that has nothing to do with the Palestinians or ceasefire. If the Palestinians were allegedly oppressed by Syria and Iraq and Turkey, as the Kurds are, nobody would ever see a demonstration. There have been no demonstrations on college campuses to speak of about Darfur, what's going on there. Very few about Russia and Ukraine. In fact, a few have been in favor of Russia. This is not about Palestine. It's not good for the Palestinians. This is pure anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, anti-Westernism, anti-Judeo-Christianism, and anti the right approach to things. It's just anti, and it's back to the anarchy of the 1970s, but it's much worse.
Is it going to get worse before it gets better? And how can we fix it, Alan?
It's getting much worse because these people who are the Hitler Youth of today are the future of tomorrow. And they're going to become the editors of the New York Times. Already the New York Times is part of the problem. Look, why does Hamas do this? It does this because it has a winning strategy. They call it the CNN strategy. In my book, War Against the Jews, I call it the dead baby strategy. You kill Jews in Israel. You know Israel's going to try to get the terrorists and try to prevent the rockets. You put your babies and children with the rockets and with the terrorists. You know then inevitably Israel will kill some babies. You then show it to CNN. CNN puts it in the lead because if it bleeds, it leads. And if it bleeds babies, it leads even more. The media plays a role in this. The world then condemns Israel. Wash, rinse, repeat. Michael Finnegan, begin again, begin again. That's the way they do it. It's going to happen again and again and again, unless three things happen. The three things I call for in my book. Hamas must be totally destroyed. People say, oh, you can never destroy an ideology. Yes, you can. When the Nazis were completely destroyed, when there was unconditional surrender, total war, the Germans became one of the best countries in the world. The Nazi ideology was destroyed along with the Nazi generals, and you can destroy Hamas's ideology along with Hamas. So that's step one. Step two is you've got to go after Iran. They're the leader of the pack. They're the head of the snake. And Israel, once it cleans up Hamas, must destroy Iran's nuclear capacity. They deserve it. They declared war in Israel. The United States should supply them with the logistical needs necessary to do it, bunker bombs, etc. Third, the United States should pressure Saudi Arabia to make peace with Israel and become part of the Abraham Accords. The reason that this all started was because Iran wanted to make sure that Israel and the Saudis never made peace. And so the end result has to be the peace treaty between Israel and the Saudi Arabian government.
Right. And then a week ago, you saw a joint statement by Saudi and Iran asking for a ceasefire. That's not exactly the kind of thing you expect to see in that region, and that probably doesn't move any peace accord ahead. Was that surprising to you, and is that a step backwards?
Exactly what Hamas wanted. It's a step backwards. It's many steps backwards. First of all, a ceasefire will cost many more lives than it will take.
Explain that point, Alan, because that triggers a lot of people. Explain that.
Yeah, a ceasefire would save a few lives in the short term. These are lives that could easily be saved by Hamas. Remember, every baby that dies as the result of an Israeli bullet is the responsibility of Hamas. It's like if I take you as a hostage in a bank and I start shooting from behind you and I start killing people, and the police, in an effort to try to get me, accidentally kill you. The policeman is not guilty of murder, even though the bullet came from his gun. I'm the hostage taker. I'm guilty of murder. So every single death is attributable to Hamas. But yes, a ceasefire would cause some lives to be saved in the short run, but it would guarantee that Hamas will do it again and again and again. It will mean more Israeli deaths, more Palestinian deaths, more babies dying. So sometimes you need to continue the war, just like a ceasefire with Germany in the middle of the war would have cost more lives. Sometimes a ceasefire is very, very bad for peace.
And so how should this play out in an ideal scenario? Right now, Gaza is surrounded. The Israelis are going kind of, street warfare. How should it play out? Should they completely eradicate the entire Gaza Strip from any population? Or what is the solution?
No. First of all, the vast majority of Gazans support Hamas. So I'm not shedding a lot of tears for the father, for example, who got a call from his son in the middle of killing Jews on October 7th, and the son's bragging, I just killed 10 Jews with my bare hands, and the father's saying, great, it's fantastic, I'm so glad you did it. I don't shed a tear if he's collateral damage, or if other people who allow their houses to be used. You know, you hear about 11,000 people being killed in Gaza. It's total nonsense. The figure is probably closer to 2,000 or 3,000. Why? First, they don't separate out civilians from combatants. So a substantial number of the 11,000, first of all, 11,000 is exaggeration. It's probably 7 or 8, but a substantial number of them are Hamas terrorists. Another substantial number are people who have been accessories to Hamas. For example, the UN people who have been killed. A lot of them are Hamas operatives, just like the UNRWA is a wholly owned Hamas subsidiary. Let's take the doctors in the hospital. These are doctors that come out on television cameras. They look the camera in the eye and they say, I swear to you, I've been in this hospital 16 years. I've never seen a Hamas fighter. Total lies. These are Hamas spokesmen. The IDF showed a photograph, a video of a Hamas fighter wearing a Hamas uniform, carrying an RPG openly into the front door of the hospital. Duh, the doctor didn't see that. The doctor didn't see that behind the MRI machines are machine guns and rocket propellers. So the doctors are complicitous. The UN is complicitous. UNRWA is complicitous. The number of actually innocent people, and I shed a tear for every little child, and by the way, children, they say half the people are children. Yeah, they're 18, 17, 16, and 15-year-old child soldiers. Many of them, Hamas recruits people from the age of 15 and sometimes even lower, and they help build tunnels, and they're killed by their tunnels. By the way, the other people not included in the 11,000 figure are people who are killed by Islamic Jihad rockets or Hamas rockets. We know that about 20% of the rockets fired from Gaza toward Israel fail and land in Gaza. So don't believe that 11,000 statistic. It's just a total phony.
What about the Al-Shifa hospital? I mean, what do we see there? It's been surrounded now. Obviously, they found some of those weapons. I've already seen the video on the inside. What's Israel supposed to do? And then what do they do next? They're getting a lot of backlash from now the worldwide community to stop. They can only go so far, right?
They should ignore the international community. They're a bunch of hypocrites. They don't care. The international community isn't saying anything about the genocide that's going on in Darfur today. They're not saying anything about the oppression of the Kurds. It's a double standard. They should ignore the international community. As far as the hospital is concerned, the media has it all wrong. The media is asking Israel to prove that there were actually command and control centers underneath the hospital. That's irrelevant under international law. The only thing that's relevant is, did Israel reasonably believe there were command centers underneath the hospital? Reasonably believe. The United States intelligence told them it was true. I think it's true. It's probably true. But if it turns out there isn't a single gun in the hospital or a single command center or a single tunnel, Israel would still have been acting within the law if it had a reasonable basis for believing that it was a hospital for combatants. That's the law. I'm an expert in the law. I know the law. And I can tell you that international law doesn't depend on whether there are actually combatants inside. It's the reasonableness of the basis on which Israel made the decision. And the decision was entirely reasonable. Not only did Israeli intelligence see the tunnels, so did American intelligence, so did other international intelligence agencies. So Israel acted absolutely properly in Al-Shifa hospital. Now the other hypocritical, they said, oh, they didn't show the tunnels quickly enough. If Israel had gone in quickly, or if they had bombed from the air, they'd be criticized. So they went in slowly, and they did it layer by layer by layer. It may take some time. So, Israel is criticized no matter what it does, just like America is often criticized no matter what it does, and criticized by countries that have no concern for human rights, whatever.
Alan, gameplay this forward out to be 1 month, 1 year, 10 years. What is the ideal or the realistic ideal scenario for Israel right now? What happens?
Well, I would hope the three things that I want to have happen: the destruction of Hamas, the destruction of Iran's nuclear capacity, and peace with the Saudis. Ultimately, the two-state solution is the least worst solution. It's not perfect, but it's the least worst.
What happens in Gaza? What happens in Gaza?
Gaza has to be ruled by the Palestinian Authority. It can't be ruled by Hamas. Now, the question is, What if the majority of Gazans vote to support Hamas? That can't be allowed to happen. If the majority of Germans voted to support the Nazi Party in 1945 and 1946, the United States would not have ended its military occupation. It's up to the Palestinians. If they substitute for their kleptocracy, remember the Hamas leaders are living in Qatar in five-star hotels. I know, I've been to Qatar. I've met the Emir of Qatar. I know how good life is in Qatar for the Palestinians. But the Palestinians have to determine their own fate. So far, they've refused to take yes for an answer. They could have had a state in 37-38, 47-48, 67, 92, 2005, and even during the Trump administration, they were offered a deal. They've said no to everything. Abbas himself has said, he told me personally, I had dinner with him. He said to me personally, he wished Arafat had accepted the 2000-2001 President Clinton Ehud Barak offer. It was a serious mistake not to do it. Palestinians have made mistake after mistake after mistake. The only reason there's still an occupation of any part of what is called Palestine is because the Palestinians have said no to a two-state solution.
You mentioned nuclear option. I mean, that's a very dangerous thing even to speak about, Alan. Can you talk about why you talk about that, and is it really a practical option for Israel?
It's not an easy option for Israel, but if Iran were to develop nuclear weapons and threaten to bomb Israel would have no choice but to deploy its nuclear weapons against Iran. This doesn't come from me. This comes from the leader of Iran. Here's what the leader of Iran said some years ago. He said, if we develop a bomb, we will drop it on Tel Aviv. We will kill 3 million Jews. That will be the end of the Jewish state because this is his words. Israel is a one-bomb state. Israel will then retaliate and drop an atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb on Tehran, killing 10 to 20 million Muslims. And this is the key. And he said the trade-off would be worth it because it would be the end of Israel, the end of Judaism, but it wouldn't be the end of Muslim and Islamic rule. So you cannot allow a country that has leaders who express views like that to have nuclear weapons. So if Israel is threatened by nuclear Armageddon, it has to take preemptive action. And if that includes the use of tactical nuclear weapons, it would be terrible. It would be a disaster. But Israel is not going to commit politicide. No country in history ever has. It will not allow itself to be destroyed. It will use nuclear weapons before it allows itself to be destroyed. We all hope it will not come to that, but Israel will not allow itself to be destroyed.
Alan, you said that Hamas is fighting a CNN war. I mean, in how many ways is Israel playing right into Hamas's plans? I mean, they went and did this, they got the reaction, they got the international reaction. Is this going exactly how Hamas planned?
Exactly. And it's the fault of CNN, and it's the fault of the New York Times, and it's the fault of the media. It's the fault of the United Nations. It's the fault of Canada. It's the fault of Spain. It's the fault of France, all of which have condemned Israel. And they said to Hamas, oh, wow, you're successful. We're helping you. We're going to do this again and again. Yeah, the world is playing right into Hamas's hands. And Israel has finally said, enough's enough. We're going to buck international opinion, and we're going to do what the international community should have done a long time ago. What they did for ISIS and Al-Qaeda, we're now going to do to Hamas. And Israel is finally doing the right thing. It should have done it years earlier. It should have destroyed Hamas years earlier before they were hostages. Now it is much more difficult because of the hostages.
Alan, you're good friends with Netanyahu. I think you even met with him recently in the last year. What is your read on him? He's gotten a lot of criticism for either letting the attack happen or for doing this to save his political career. What do you make of Bibi?
I had a 3-hour lunch with him 8 days before these events. That is the Friday night, 1 week before the Saturday. 3 hours we talked. He was in a great mood. I was helping him with trying to come to a compromise on judicial reform. Remember that? You know, that today is old news. Look, he is the prime minister, and the prime minister bears ultimate responsibility for what is probably the greatest intelligence failure in modern history. There were two intelligence failures. Number one, the failure to see what was going to happen, the attack. But number two, much more serious and much less understandable, is the failure of the Israeli military to get to the terrorists within an hour of when this started. They could have saved hundreds of the 1,200 people and probably could have prevented the hostage taking of many. Nobody to this day understands why the Israeli army, with its helicopters and its jets and its ground forces, did not get down there more quickly. That will happen after the war is over. There'll be an after-the-fact analysis, and this will all come out. There'll be no secrets, and it will be a devastating critique of every aspect of the Israeli government, starting with the prime minister and going down to the head of the IDF, to the head of Israeli intelligence, to the Mossad, to the Shin Bet. No one will survive. No person who is in a position of authority on October 7th will be untainted by this report.
Yeah, that was really hard to believe. I mean, in 2018, I went to Israel. I spent some time in Tel Aviv and went to Jerusalem, and I know how small of a landmass it is. And I saw the tweets here in London on Saturday morning, and I could have gotten to a plane and flown there and got to some of those kibbutzes quicker than the army. And it was just hard to imagine that it wasn't being stopped sooner.
Yeah, when there was a grandfather, a former general, who got in his car from Tel Aviv, drove down to one of the kibbutzim and saved the lives of people with his pistol. It was easier to get by car from Tel Aviv than these multi-million-dollar attack helicopters. Where were they? I just don't get it. I know a lot about Israel. I've been there over 100 times. I do not know the answer to that question.
A lot of conspiracy theories floating around about that, which I'm sure will be dealt with in the future. What has Israel done wrong, in your opinion, the last month?
Well, they didn't anticipate this attack, and they didn't react more quickly. I think after that, they've done everything pretty much right. I think their reaction has been proportionate. I think they have tried to minimize civilian deaths. Let's remember, too, when the United States fought a war against terrorism thousands of miles away from its borders, in Afghanistan, it killed over 70,000 civilians. When it fought a war against Iraq for no good reason, that was the wrong war at the wrong time, but it did it. Between 270 and 330 civilians died. And now we're talking about, we don't know the number, less than 11,000. So there's a lot of double standard hypocrisy about that. Civilians die when terrorists hide behind civilians. And the world has to understand that that's the fault of the terrorists. So, is Israel's public relation not good enough? Well, when you're living in a world where there's a double standard applied to Jews and to the Jewish state, it's awfully hard to overcome that by effective public relations. Israeli spokesmen who appear on television have credibility. They've generally been accurate in their statements, whereas Hamas has no credibility. Doctors in these hospitals have no credibility, but the world treats them as morally equivalent. That's very difficult. That's our problem, as well as Israel's.
Will Hezbollah attack?
It will attack in a minimal way. It will not attack all out because it knows that Israel has the Air Force capacity to retaliate not only against Hezbollah, but against Iran. Iran's winning. They're laughing all the way to the bank. They're the winners of this whole thing. They haven't lost anybody. They've lost a couple of soldiers but they're winning. They're laughing. They started this whole thing, and they're getting away with it. And they're going to do it again and again and again. That's why Israel has to. I wish it could bring about regime change. That should have happened during the Obama administration, but it didn't. And so now Israel has no choice but to ultimately, if it can, destroy Iran's nuclear reactor program.
Which they've been actively doing, right? They've been assassinating nuclear scientists. Mossad has been very busy doing that for the last, actively, 5 years and probably 20 years.
Has been. It started with Egypt back in the 1940s. These are targeted assassinations designed to prevent civilian deaths. Most of the people who have been killed have been complicitous, but Israel may have to take the next step because Iran is coming closer and closer to having a nuclear arsenal, and that is intolerable to the world. If you think North Korea is dangerous, North Korea is not trying to export; it's just trying to stay in power. Even China, the most dangerous country in the world is Iran. If you give them nuclear weapons, they become incrementally more dangerous.
Alan, does the Arab world care about Palestinians? I mean, it seems to me that Egypt doesn't want them. And with countries like Saudi and these others, it feels like they have to publicly support them. But at the end of the day, nobody really wants Palestinians. PragerU put a video out the other day talking about all the Palestinians that have been expelled from various Arab states over the last 30 years. What is the real relationship between all of those actors?
Well, first of all, the only country in the Middle East that cares about the Palestinians is Israel. There's a great movement in Israel for a two-state solution. Horribly, tragically, ironically, many of the people who were killed on October 7th were peace advocates who support the Palestinians, who really care about the Palestinians. These are people who brought people in from Gaza to work in their homes, not knowing that some of them were spies, reporting back at how to kill their children. But Israel cares about the Palestinians. Many Americans care about the Palestinians. The Arabs don't care about the Palestinians. The Muslims don't care about the Palestinians. They use them as a tool. For example, is anybody concerned about what's going on in Darfur, where you have Muslim groups?
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real. And he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.